Welcome to Modern Business Life. Real conversations with the leaders, operators, and innovators shaping the way business gets done. No fluff, no filter. Just the stuff you wish people weren't scared to say out loud. Interested in being a guest? Email us at guest@modernbusiness.life. On with the pod.
Welcome to today's edition of the podcast. Today's guest is a two-time President's Club winner, back-to-back, and one of the more interesting sales leaders I've come across. Spent nearly 7 years at this company, at JumpCloud, the identity and device management platform where he started as an individual contributor and has built his way up to senior manager of direct sales, leading teams across 2 continents. In that time, he built the company's SMB motion from the ground up. He's hired more than a dozen reps, hit $1 million in annual recurring revenue, 280 net new logos, and cut the average sales cycle from 43 days to 17 days, which certainly got my attention. He's also on the customer advisory board of Apollo.io, which I know is a company that many of you tap into for email sequencing, for lead data, and other tools. He's a self-described Web3 and blockchain evangelist, and as of a month ago, he's a new dad. He leads with mindfulness, coaches with storytelling, and he's deeply curious about what AI is actually going to do to the way sales teams operate. Dustin DeBolt, welcome to the pod today.
Hey, Colin, thanks for having me. I love that introduction. I might need to save that as a snippet somewhere.
Yeah, well, it's all true. I mean, so you got that going for you. Look, I want to dive right in. The thing that got my attention, as I may have mentioned, cutting a sales cycle in a B2B environment by more than half is incredibly impressive. Typically because the entropy of a sales cycle sort of establishes itself. There's only so much you can do to get buyers, whether it's enterprise or it's transactional. There's only so much you can do to create a compelling event. Walk me through that. Like, how did you do it? Was it content? Was it the way you pitched deals? Was it the markets you were selling into? How did you get that sales cycle cut so quickly?
Yeah, I think the first bit of context. So I lead our Enterprises of Tomorrow group, right? So my team focuses on high growth verticals, VC funded companies, and new companies, right? So the part of the way that we can do this is because things move faster in general these days, and my team focuses specifically on that target market. So that's the very first one. In terms of how we did it, I think there's 2 key ways that allows our team to shorten sales cycles. Number one, it's not rocket science, but automation, right? Okay. Effective to-dos and tasks lists, whether you do it in Salesforce, Salesloft, outreach, it doesn't really matter. Effectively communicating with your prospects consistently is the best way to move a deal quickly, right? So we use Gong Engage internally. And so we've got Gong flows set up. It's very similar to outreach. Those flows hit you with an email sequence, calls, LinkedIn, right? It allows you to multi-thread and multi-channel into accounts. So I think that's a really big part of it, not letting any deals fall off. The other part is in the segment that we work in, we have the opportunity to speak to decision makers much quicker than sometimes at an enterprise level organization, right? So sometimes we jump on a call and we sell into the IT and identity, security, compliance space, right? Sometimes you'll hop on with an IT admin, very, day-to-day support tickets, but a lot of times in our segment, we're hopping on with CTOs, co-founders, VP of technology. So we're talking to an economic buyer much more quickly, which allows you to also speed up a sales cycle. So I think those are the 2 things, right? It's like automation, use your automation and outreach platforms to keep your name top of mind, talk to prospects, send them really helpful resources, call them on the phone. And then the other one is get to economic buyers as soon as you can.
Got it. I like how you leaned into hey, get them on the phone. I think that, I don't know. I know actually kind of know why. People just don't pick up the phone. And I've been around long enough, and I'm sure you have too, to realize so many BDRs, SDRs want to get promoted to account executives so they can stop cold call, right? When it should be the inverse. You should be being trained on the cold call to keep that skill with you for the rest of the future. What's the one thing you got right in building this team? I mean, 13 hires, 280 logos, that's big growth. That's not hiring 1 or 2 people to help you. What's the thing that you got right in that? Was it the people you hired? Is it the products? I'm sure it's a little bit of everything, but in your words.
Yeah. The first thing, so JumpCloud is a highly remote-based organization, right? And that goes across the entire company. We used to be in an office here in Colorado, right? COVID hit, like everyone else, we went remote. That allowed us to expand into a talent pool much more broad across the globe. So now we've got people in hundreds of countries. We've got folks in Bangalore, India, and in Mexico City, and in Europe, and so on and so forth. So that's the DNA of JumpCloud, right? One thing that we did with this team, we brought people back to the office. So when we created this team, part of the requirement was that it was a hybrid role. So we do 3 days a week in office. What that allowed us to do was ramp people much more quickly, right? It's such a force multiplier for you to have people learning from each other in person. There's a great advantage to being able to take a call from your hotel or from your home office, right? But especially when you're ramping people, allowing them to be in person and learn from each other, have in-person guest speakers. We had sales engineers come in. We had our co-founder come in, right? It builds this really strong culture. And so that was one of the huge reasons I think we found success in this first year of building this team. And then the other one is hiring for attributes and not skills, right? So you can hire someone and this is a personal philosophy of mine, other people may differ in this. You can hire someone because they have some certification, or you can hire them because they do a lot of phone calls or because they have certain experience, right? I hire people because of the attributes that they possess. And the two major ones, intelligent and motivated. If you can hire people that are intelligent, you can teach them almost any sales process, right? And then if you can hire people that are motivated, find their internal motivations. It's different for everyone, right? Hire somebody that's motivated, they find a way to go win no matter what it takes. And so that was really the DNA of when I was building this team that I think helped us find success early.
It's interesting you say that. I've told teams for years that I've worked with from the motivation standpoint is I tell them, like, look, I'm not the cheerleader. If waking up in the morning and looking at your mortgage and looking at your kids doesn't motivate you to come and do a good job, nothing I say is going to help. And that seems to be consistent with what you said. Something that I thought was really interesting that you've pointed out in the past is that sales is perhaps the only profession, the only department in the business that is expected to perform at a very, very high level, but not often given the time, the resources to actually practice. What do you all do in-house? Like, are you doing role plays? Are you using AI yet to like have conversations? How is it that you're keeping your reps sharp or helping them grow?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. I was recommended a book recently by our CRO called The Leadership Playbook by Nathan Jameel, and it's just a fantastic read. I'm only like 2 chapters in. Don't tell her that. But the learnings were pretty much immediate. Some of this stuff we already do. Some of this stuff I'm implementing now. But the key part is you always have a number to go hit. You've always got a customer call to be on, right? So we throw people to the wolves pretty quickly in sales, and then expect them to sink or swim, right? And then in the middle, you take time and you do enablement and you do learnings, right? But you rarely ever practice, right? So what we've done now is I implemented two new types of coaching. We've always had mock demos, we've always had sales enablement, right? But the two new things that I've added in 2020, well, I guess it was Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year, is game film study, right? So what we do is we take the team into a room, we pull up Gong, we have their conversation going, right? And some people call this like time travel study, but just call it film study, where you play the prospect call, right? Everybody comes with a snippet based on some certain topic. Maybe it's upfront contract, maybe it's next steps. So they bring a snippet. You play the snippet of the part where the prospect is speaking, and then you pause it. So then you go to the room and say, what do we say in this situation? Or what have you found success with in this situation? People go through, they say, oh, I would say this, I would ask this question. And then the rep themselves gets 20/20 hindsight and says, you know what? Knowing what I know now, I would say this. We hit play and we show what we actually said and see if it lines up. And sometimes you go, oh, great. You asked an awesome question to get to their decision criteria, or you asked a really solid why question about their environment, right? Or sometimes it's just, it totally blows up and you say like, man, I whiffed, I whiffed on that one. And so we'll do game study like that with snippets. Have you ever tried something like that?
No, not like that. That is, frankly, that's as creative of a use as I am familiar with. And it's given me a lot to think about. The closest I think I've come is letting reps sit in on each other's, like in a group on like a cold call. And it's very time consuming because conversion rates on cold calls are now really low. And I guess they've always been low, but I would bring like 5 or 6 people into a room, and we kind of go around the room. And this is back pre-Zoom, where you like literally just use the
oh, I remember vividly.
And cold call, right? And so you'd sit there sometimes felt like hours with nothing happening, and then somebody get a connection, right? And they try to do the cold call, and this was probably wildly inefficient, but it was a lot of fun. It's like one person would jump up to the whiteboard, everybody else would be listening, and so the person's doing the cold call, and they've got their, I never use scripts, I always use bullet points. They've got their bullet points, but like the rest of the team is listening, so they're absorbing in real time. And then we would do like a post-mortem. So afterwards, it's like somebody at the whiteboard is like capturing, okay, this was their problem. And then so it wasn't like real-time film study, but it was like right in the moment. So super duper fresh. And the person who had experienced the call, it was still fresh in their head. They're still thinking about what could I have done differently. But the way you've described it is a lot more programmatic, which is fascinating. How does within that construct, I like the idea of using your own team to say, like, this is what I said that might have worked, or this is how I would approach it. How much do externalities factor in? How much are you all framing like against competitors, against a Microsoft, against an Okta? Does that come up in those, not just in those trainings, but in the actual sales process itself?
It's become an unavoidable part of tech sales, right? It's a highly, highly competitive market. Being as our largest competitor is one of the world's first trillion-dollar organizations with Microsoft, we've always been familiar with that, our value prop against theirs, right? Competitive positioning. But what I've found, and this leads into your AI topic you mentioned earlier, is that buyers are more informed than ever, which is giving them a huge diversity of opinion and a huge well to pull from on what exactly they can go evaluate, and also not to mention how much they know about it. Everybody's an expert all of a sudden, right? So people come in and they may already have not only a competitor, but they may already have deep information about you and your competitor because of the resources they have. We're just all so much more informed now because of these tools. And so we talk about competitive positioning quite a lot. Huge shout out to our sales enablement team. Actually, there's a guy named John Milne. He's the director of our sales enablement program. And he is a master at battle cards and creating these resources for the team to go in and use. So I actually created, in the lines of competitors, we actually completed a hackathon last year, and what our project was called JumpCloud Competitive Expert. So what we did was we took Notebook LM, which is Google's, it's an LLM where you feed in the sources, right? So it's not pulling from external sources, comes from internal, and we fed it full of our competitive battle cards, huge data sets of information about our competitors, and then what we also did is we took Gong transcripts of deals that we had won against our competitors, and we fed that in as a resource. Then we changed the prompt so you could just ask it a one-word prompt where you don't have to type a big long question, right? So we just would type in landmine or questions, right? And what it'll do is it'll pull up trap questions for you to ask your prospect based on a competitor, or like Okta landmine, and it's like, here's a trap question for Okta, or something that we already know Okta does poorly, or one of our competitors, right, does poorly. And so they are enabled with that, right, live on calls. And so that's another huge thing that we did, was using AI to sort of ready people competitively. And I hope I'm not speaking out of school. I think people should know that those are our competitors. I really hope that's not overstepping. It feels obvious, but I don't know how these work.
I don't think so. Frankly, I think it's foolish whether you're an owner, founder, executive, or really it's foolish to think that you don't have any competition. And I coach people through this sometimes. They're like, oh, who are your competitors? Well, we don't have any competitors. I'm like, I promise you, you have a competitor. The competitor may just be the status quo. Like, and if you don't have any named competitors, you're either not looking very hard or they're on their way. And like, I work with some AI organizations. Like, we don't have any competitors. I'm like, if I ask you in 6 months, Palantir is going to be a competitor, or you're in a bad market.
Yeah.
Well, stop. Right. Yeah. Like, there are people and businesses out there. 7.5 billion people in the world, 5 billion of them have access to the internet. There's a competitor for everything. Okay. Yeah. So with that in mind, like, how do you see mentioning AI? Like, that's an incredible use case, an incredible example. I think a lot of people are thinking about AI from an agentic standpoint. How do I get it to send more emails for me? Not thinking about, like, how do I use it to enable and embolden me and my team? How else do you think AI is going to change the broader sales landscape? Not asking for your secret sauce, but I'm just talking about the big picture stuff.
Yeah, I mean, from a big picture perspective, intelligence has become much, much cheaper, right? So what it used to be is humans would train, this is going to get a little bit philosophical. Humans used to trade their intelligence and their time as labor, right? In exchange for money, in exchange for freedom, and so on and so forth. That relationship is changing in the world, because now you have a organization like, say, Google, one of the most powerful, well-respected organizations in the world, where they own intelligence through their AI models. They own compute through their data centers. They're starting to pick up energy and power suppliers, right? So they own the power that goes in there. And then now you have this equation, feed in power, get out intelligence on the other side. So I think from a broad, like a 10,000 foot view, humans' relationship with work is changing. Doesn't mean you need less people. It just means you need people that understand how to use this technology, right? And it's going to be human plus agent. And our little joke is like, our team is a ISR, like inside sales reps plus AI. That's you two are a team now. It's you plus AI. That's the rep that goes out and goes to tackle this market.
Yeah, that I agree completely. You hear a lot of people think like, oh, AI is going to make things more efficient. It's going to make people not have to work as hard. And I understand the logic behind that argument. I take the view, because I've been selling software long enough, that like I've never sold a code tool to any CIO or CTO who said, oh, great, now my team working 40 hours a week can now work 20 hours a week and get the same productivity. They say, good, they'll keep working 40 hours a week. They'll just do twice as much. So like, that's
100%.
Yeah.
And you notice it too. Just speaking from experience, right? It's like everybody is doing more. That goes back to the competitive landscape. It's more competitive than ever. Every human can do more. I'm not a Salesforce expert necessarily, but I've become pretty darn close to one with the help of Gemini, right?
Yeah,
I can ask, what type of report do I want to make? What kind of filters? What do I want to find? What are the insights I want? And it gives me step-by-step instructions on how to build it. It's a superpower.
I work with web developers constantly. I'm like, you either need to figure out how to charge six figures or you need to get in a different line of business, because it's not because the owner of the auto parts store can build a website that's as good as yours. That's not the point. The point is he thinks the kid down the street can do it. And so he's now benchmarking you against a kid that would do it for $50 and a six pack of beer, and he's not going to pay you 10 grand. And so it's the perception of quality. You've got to find a way to either get premium or get into a different line of business.
Yeah, interesting.
Just got a couple more questions for you. One, and I hope you don't mind me asking. Just came back from paternity leave. I'm a father myself. I've got two children. I know it changed my perspective.
Congrats,
when both of my kids were born, I was carrying a bag in enterprise software, and it changed not motivations necessarily, but it also changed like sort of my clarity of purpose and how I went to work each day. Have you had time to reflect on any lessons, anything that you've learned, any shifts in your own point of view?
It's a very thoughtful question, Colin. Yeah, I have. The big thing for me has been, it's this like beginner's mindset, you know? It's like seeing the world through new eyes. Like I see my son and he's just figuring out how to grab toys and how to wiggle around, and and seeing the world through that reminds me of just like how special and unique these moments are, and not take any time for granted. I think it's given me a really good reset. It also makes me think about the world, the type of skills that I want to give him with this. My wife would say this is way too early to be thinking, but in my mind I go, is he going to be a sales guy? Is he going to be a in tech like that? So I'm trying to think in my mind. I'm like, all right, how do I best prepare him for this new world with AI, right? And so I think it's caused me to look at it it's caused me to look like 20, 30 years in the future, where as sales, I'm looking like 1 month, 1 quarter. I'm looking pretty sure I got blinders on to go hit this number that I have. And so it's just opened up my perspective quite a lot, I think. And it's just been a beautiful time. It's less sleep, a little less hair, but you know what? We're still here kicking butt. And so it's been fun.
Worth every minute. Well, look, last question I have, but this is one I like to ask everybody. If you were to go back, I don't know, 18 months, 24 months, or if you were to imagine somebody who's trying to be like the next Dustin, right? Not competing necessarily, but the next Dustin in another industry. What's the one thing you wish you'd known? What's the one thing you've learned since then where you're like, man, it sure would have been helpful? The time machine back to the previous me or to somebody in my position, if they just knew X, they'd be a little bit further along in the journey.
Yeah, the number one thing I would say would be it's a JumpCloud value. And you actually said it earlier today, which I thought was so funny. It's build connections. The biggest thing you can do is build out your network. Like, even if you don't want to become a software engineer, go meet with those guys. Like, you can understand the way they think about the business. You can use their talking points when you're in conversations with a customer, right? Go book time with your C-level executive or with your VP of sales like you, right? Like, a lot of times that shows excellent initiative, and then you can get an understanding of like how executive level reps are thinking about the business. It's like, go build connections. I guess I already knew that stuff, so maybe that's not something I would tell myself, but that's advice I would give to someone. And then ask a lot of questions, right? Genuine curiosity is your best friend. Don't go into a conversation with a prospect or an interview or anything with just trying to hit your marks like it's a play. You're on a stage hitting a play. When people talk, if you listen to them and you follow them down the paths, that genuine curiosity will serve you way better than any script ever could.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And your example, and kind of bring it together. My daughter is a sophomore in high school. She wants to be a drum major in the band next year. And she's like, I'm practicing and I want to do this. And I said, have you bothered asking the band director what he's looking for in a drum major? And she's like, no. I was like, well, you should probably do that. Right.
Yeah.
And so it kind of ties in. Look, this has been incredible. Thank you very much for joining us today. I've learned a lot. I'm sure the folks listening learned a lot. And I appreciate you taking some time to talk.
Yeah. Thank you, Colin. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun. Excited to see how the podcast goes. When it gets put up, I can't wait to listen to the other guests as well.
That's right. All right. Appreciate it.
See you, Colin.